everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Screen Chronicles. Today, we are covering the ending of Seven Kings Must Die. We did talk about it some in our podcast episode review on the whole thing.
Of the whole movie, yep.
Of the whole movie, so check that out. Check out all of our thoughts. We have a great discussion on it, but we wanted to break down today for people to explain what's going on in that end scene there. You see, in the end, Uhtred has been wounded in the final battle of the movie, and it looks at first like he's possibly dead. We later see he is alive. He reconciles with Ethelstan. Bebbanburg is back to being his fortress again with his family. Yep. And he's looking at going, and his group of friends is encouraging him to go back to the room he just left where he was resting. But instead of his room being there, we see a giant hall full of what looks like some of his former cast members who have died.
Who are Danes. Vikings who believe in
Valhalla,
the place that they are.
Yes. So what this is here is what he's seeing is Valhalla. And for people who don't know what Valhalla is, in Norse mythology, Valhalla is sort of the afterlife that you want to go to. It's usually associated with a warrior's death. Mm-hmm. And specifically to this show and the books that this show is based off of by Bernard Cornwell, the specific way to get into Valhalla is to hold a sword and die. And
for Valhalla you must! Give me my sword!
Die.
Give me my sword!
Or a weapon.
Yes, a weapon.
It could be an axe. It could be, yeah.
But we've heard you can die in battle and all these other things, but specifically to the show and the books, they want you to be holding on to a weapon. And that's sort of the logistics to get there.
And it's made it fun while watching it. Like when people have died, like, oh no, he wasn't holding on, or thank God he was holding on. Like it's always made it fun. It's always made it fun.
It adds to it. And what Valhalla is, besides just the afterlife for the Danes, is that when you die, you go to Odin's feast hall, who's called the Allfather, one of the main gods in the Norse mythology. And what Odin is doing is getting all of the best warriors over time, and he's trying to get them ready for Ragnarok, which is the end of days in Norse mythology, when the world ends, the world serpent eats and battles Thor, and the world ends and time gets crazy. And so what happens when you're in Valhalla is you feast during the day, and then you go out and fight, and you kill each other, and then they recover and come back, and they hump and feast,
totally.
and that is heaven to them.
It's the ultimate goal for a Viking warrior. It's what they want. It's way better than the alternative of going to Niflheim if you don't die a valiant death, or you don't die in Last Kingdom with a sword in your hand. That's bad. Yeah, you do not want to go there. That's their version of hell, except I think it's super cold, and you don't want to go there. You want to go to Valhalla. That's what you want. And a lot of like warriors will actually willing to die in battle just to go there.
Yes.
And I think that's what helps them be so vicious, is that they actually somewhat want death in that way.
They want to have the good death. So it's that definitely contributed to their culture, and that's something that's been a big part of the Last Kingdom. And when Uhtred has had these fatal wounds, he's looking at his friends and family on one side, and on the other side, he's looking into Valhalla, or what is appearing to be to him as Valhalla. And we can see Heston, who was a character that died in season 5, as well as Brita, who died in season 5. And we see Ragnar the Elder, who is from season 1 of The Last Kingdom, the Dane who raised Uhtred as a Dane.
Yep.
And we also see Klappa, one of his main bro squad members from season 2, who died in the season finale there as well. And we also see tons of other people in the giant hall there. So yeah, that's what is going on. That's what they're showing going on in that scene. And we had talked about the ending in our podcast. Make sure to check that out there for a little discussion. But Colby has watched it a couple more times since then. I've rewatched that scene too. So we also want to just talk about that a little bit more,
Just
get a little
dive
more
into the
thoughts
ending.
on it.
Yeah.
Again,
And I have to admit that my feelings of it since the first time I watched it to now, where I've watched it 3 times now, have changed. Have changed a lot, pretty significantly, really. And I'm excited to sort of. I feel like I'm thinking about it a little bit more clearly now. I'm less emotional about sort of the immediate feelings you get after it. So I'm excited to kind of dive into it a little bit more.
yeah, I mean that's exactly when I was first watching it. I was we talk about this in the podcast, but I was very emotional. I thought they were going to kill Uhtred in the battle, and then I'm like, oh, he's alive, and then it's still everyone's still talking with him, and he's talking with them as though it's expected he will die.
Right.
But you know, he is up and walking around, and Finnan does say, you know, I die before you, and we see in the end here he's actually positioned sort of in what to me is representing as limbo.
Limbo, yeah.
Where he's not in completely in the feast hall with his friends and family, and he's not in Odin's hall yet though either. He's not in Valhalla. So and you see he's looking back and forth, and he's sort of like holding his own arms, and to me I think that's him there sort of having to make the decision. And it reminds me of the scene from the final scene from Harry Potter where Dumbledore tells Harry Potter, we're at a train station, we have the
King's
train
Cross,
or you could leave the train station. And he's like, well, where does the train go? And he goes, on. Yeah. Or you could go back and it'll be painful and life. And Harry ends up, you know, spoiler alert for Harry Potter, he ends up going back and living on. So I think that's sort of where, to me anyway, Uhtred is. And there's you know, you mentioned there's a lot of things that they sort of set up to make you think that the end is Uhtred dies.
Well, they have Finnan narrate for one. They've always had Uhtred narrate, and I thought since Finnan narrates, well, Uhtred's not able to tell his story anymore, which must mean maybe he died. You know, that was one thing. They all kind of talk to him with finality at the end, which, you know, he also looks at Osbert, which you could interpret as like, okay, my legacy is living on, so I can go to Valhalla. But it isn't the Last Kingdom way to actually show something mythological, right?
Mm-hmm.
For real, right? So I think we have to interpret what Uhtred's seeing as just in his head of what he wants to see at death. And at least that's the way I look at it. I feel like it would sort of go against the grain of actually showing something mythological, but they've had him hallucinate before. They've had him see Leofric in his head. And it would make a lot of sense if he's toward death and he sees Valhalla. And I think that's a beautiful, beautiful ending.
Yeah, he was stabbed like so many times.
He got stabbed a lot.
That's why I was so sure he was dead. But yeah, we've seen a lot of moments from the show that you could interpret as this happened because of supernatural forces, or you could be like, there's a rational explanation. We talk about from season 1 when Alfred's son Edward is cured by Iseult. He has a fever, he's crying, and they think he's gonna die, and then but he's hot, and they're mentioning how warm he is, and they put him in the ground overnight, and it's cooler, and it's like, well, did that just help bring his fever down enough that he could you know, continue to move on, or did her magic work? And then Uhtred's child died, and Alfred's son lived. It's like, well, is it because of what she said? There's the son for a son, or child for a child thing going on, or is it just because
it happened all the time?
It happened all the time back then. And the same with Bember fire being put out. Was that because Thor thought Uhtred was worthy and wanted to bring down the rain and give? Or
were they super lucky? Or super lucky?
Was it just so hot out that for so long that eventually it's gonna rain? You know, And
I love that the show does that. And so for me, it's gotta be, it's just in his head, and that's fine, because that's the way he's gonna die. He's gonna die believing he's going to Valhalla.
and if he dies accepting being happy with his life, then it'll at least be he'll be happy then with what's going on, right? So either way, it could be a good ending for Uhtred, right? He either lives and he's with his family and Bebbanburg, he's alive for it being rebuilt and bigger and stronger than ever, or he moves on and he's happy that his son is getting the place and he knows his friends are there and they'll always be there.
And the more I think about it, and I knew it was a good ending when I first saw it, but the more I see it and the more I think about it, it's brilliant the way they leave it. It's brilliant. Now, we talk in our episode talk that we're not like satisfied that it ends like that, because we were happy that he like ended happy in season 5.
Yeah.
But the further away I get from it, and I've seen it a few times now, I do really like the way it ends. And we've now followed Uhtred basically from when he was a little kid to what might be his death. Again, they leave it a little ambiguous, but there's nice finality to it. There really is, which in a way is very nice.
Yeah, I mean, you and I, we both like the endings that you can they're not always satisfying, but sometimes we really like those endings that are open for interpretation. We talked recently about Banshees of Inisherin. Our first episode we ever podcasted on was Joker.
A lot of different ways to look at those movies.
Yeah, I'm blanking on some other ones right now, but anyway, though, so it's still something I think we can appreciate, that they don't say he dies and they don't necessarily say he lives. So you could either look at it as Uhtred. It is sort of something as a fan. If the Last Kingdom is ending, you do kind of want to know that Uhtred's gonna go to Valhalla, right? That's something that's important to him. It's something you want to happen. And even though, again, I don't think he's actually seeing the realm of Valhalla, I think it's, or you could think that, but I myself do not think. I think it's because he's been stabbed 30 times and now and he's up and moving around. It
just represents his choice between life and death there. And that scene, as I watched it a third time, when they zoom out of the window when he's standing in limbo, Valhalla sort of disappears, and the last sort of moment you see Uhtred is like he's still standing in that room, just sort of staring. You know what I mean? And so that sort of grounded me again, that like maybe he is just approaching death and like seeing that option now, and that vision of his is more just like enticing him to this path. Like, it's okay, you can die now. Like, and then he looks back at his son and he sees life. So he's in that limbo, and I think that's cool, man. I think that's.
You were pretty sure he was dead though when you first saw it.
So the first time I saw it, I was just thinking, oh, he died, and he got stabbed a bunch of times, and he went back to his room to die, and he thinks he's going to Valhalla. That's sort of the immediate interpretation. Second time I watched it, there was a little bit more ambiguity, and like the more I think about it, it's not cut and dry. He's dead. It's just not. I mean, probably he succumbed not long after, but maybe not. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he survived and just sort of let his son take charge of Bebbanburg and sort of just lived out his life as an old man like he does in the books. Maybe. That's up to you to decide, I think. And I think they left it with that.
We know the prophecy is 7 kings must die, and they talk about the 5 sons that died on the field. And so it's kind of like maybe, and throughout the movie they were referring to Uhtred as a king of Bebbanburg, of Northumbria.
He never referred to himself as that.
He never referred to himself
king,
as that.
But...
So I think the fact that Finan narrating, the fact that he was referred to as a king, and the prophecy, and there was a discussion Uhtred had with Citric in the movie about how warrior kings do have a tendency to die, and that is, you know, like a conversation people always have about great warriors, and they have all these, like Alexander the Great, King Leonidas. They always have these amazing, awesome rules and amazing accomplishments, but they always do die in the end because they're fighting, and you can't win all the time. You can't go 100-0, right?
No.
So I think there was a lot of things setting up for him to die. And my analytical brain says that I think it was the writer's intention to have Uhtred die in this, but I think Uhtred doesn't die in the final book. He's an old man, and he's still talking about his life, and he's talking about holding on to Serpent's Breath, which is his sword, even in his final moments, and just in case it does happen. And I think that because, that I think because he doesn't die in the books, maybe they were hesitant to kill him off. And I also think too, they also are aware of how well received, or maybe how well the ending of season 5 was gonna be received, that they didn't want to ruin that happy ending for everyone. So they kind of leave it, I think, because of all those things, they're like, well, let's leave it open instead.
Right.
Instead of let's committing to killing him off and sending him to Valhalla, let's leave it open, in case people want to still have that happy ending, which I myself do.
I want a happy ending, and
I do.
Now, after watching a third time, I think you get to choose that if you want, man. I think you do. And I think if you want to choose that, like, I wanted to see Uhtred die. I wanted to watch it all until he died, so that I can, we've seen his entire story. There's nothing we missed. Like, that's fine too. I think you can believe that he went back to his room to die. And there's arguments either way. Another one that you could argue against him dying, as far as the prophecy goes, is Finan says to him, well, deep in your heart, you don't want to be king, so you're not a king. He said that at one point. So that's sort of like, he's kind of at that moment saying, well, you'll be safe because you're not part of the prophecy. So, and then at the table at the end before he goes, he's like, am I the 7th king? And I think that's an intentional question that they ask, and they put that in the script to become more ambiguous. There are these things that you pick up on when you watch it again, and if I just encourage people to watch the movie again. I've liked it more each time I've watched it so far. And I've heard it from other people as well that have watched it multiple times. They like it better the next watch. So try it. And I don't think you'll be disappointed.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, those are our thoughts. If you want to check out and listen to more of what we thought about that scene, especially our initial reaction because we review the movie right after Colby watches it the second time. I watched it the first time. Make sure to check out our spoiler talk YouTube and podcasts, so you can listen to it too if you want to. Make sure to like, subscribe. Let us know what you thought. What ending are you accepting from
How do you
this?
look at it? Yeah.
And let us know what you thought about it, the movie as well. But thank you all for listening. And it's like we always say,
Goodbye.
And
destiny is all.
Oh.
Well, dude.